Hi everybody, Steven here. I've had a few requests since I've done some of my multi-tenancy videos on what is source and destination NAT and how to set it up in NSX. So if you're interested in seeing that or not even sure what it is, stick around. That's what we're going to cover. See you in a bit. All right, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. So in this video, this shouldn't be too long, but I say that all the time. We're going to talk about what source and destination NATing is, or source NAT and destination NAT. I got two slides I'm going to show you. They're going to show you how to set it up in NSX. That's the most important part. So we're going to get to it, but before I do that, I always like to do these shout outs. For those of you that have subscribed to the channel, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. For anybody who's done super thanks, I also really appreciate it. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. If this is something that you're interested in and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. It's free. Just click that subscribe button. That's all you got to do. You click it. I also have super thanks enabled, but that's totally up to you. Also, sharing and liking the video also helps with YouTube analytics, okay? So, and again, feel free to leave comments down below. That also helps with analytics as well. So everything helps out. So why don't we get started? All right, so why don't we jump into this? I just got two slides here, then we'll jump right into the demo. So in my example here, I'm showing a two-tier routing. Again, if you're not familiar with any of that stuff in NSX, you need to check out all those videos on routing and whatnot. But anyways, I've got my physical environment out here. I've got a tier 0 gateway and a tier 1 gateway. I'm doing a two-tier routing in this example. I don't have to do two-tier. I could get rid of this tier 1, connect this segment right to tier 0 and do NATing if I want to. I could totally do that, but I'm just going to do it this way just to illustrate it because that's how I got it set up in my lab, okay? You'll see I've got this segment here, this NSX segment, whatever, maybe it's called web tier or whatever. I got two VMs on here. You'll see that this one has an IP of 172.16.10.11. This one 172.16.10.12, whatever. Now, what happens is I'm going to do source NATing. So source network address translation. What we're doing is we're looking, I'm not going to go through the OSI model. There's probably 1,000 videos on YouTube on that. This is basically layer 3 of the OSI model. Layer 3, we refer to, I look at it as we deal with IP addresses. So you're going to deal with source and destination IPs. So we refer to it as a packet. So as the packet's leaving the VM, okay, inside that packet, there will be a source IP where it's coming from, and there'll be a destination IP where it's going. So this VM over here at the bottom, let's say it's going to Amazon, whatever, okay? You know, it's pinging Amazon, or you've got a browser, you're going to Amazon. Here's its source IP. So it's going to leave this VM with 172.16.10.11. I had a little typo there, okay? So it's going to leave that. So if you're sniffing it at any point along here, you'll see the source IP is 172.16.10.11. Now, I'm throwing in this one here on a tier 1 gateway just for the sake of doing it. When it hits the gateway, there's a component in the gateway that's going to do this translation. It's going to look at the source IP, that 172.16.10.11. It doesn't really care what it is. It's going to look at it and say, oh, you know what? I need to replace that with something else that you told me to replace it with. In this case, I'm going to tell it to replace it with this address, 2020.20.1. Now, what component of the tier 1 gateway does this? Now, this is the part where you need to understand routing in NSX. In our gateways, we have this SR component and we have a DR component, the distributed router component and the source routing component, right? Sorry, not source routing, service router component. The DR component lives on all the transport nodes, your ESXi host. The SR component, the service router, lives on the edge node. So again, this source IP, the original IP, will stay there till it hits the SR component on the edge. And at that point, the edge node does that translation, okay? So you need to understand SRDs or DRs. I'm not going to cover it in here. That's overkill. Watch my routing videos, okay? So it will then do the translation. So from here at this point now, if I was sniffing it at this packet or wherever, if I was sniffing it, I'd look at my layer 3 packet, I'd see the source IP. Source IP would be 20.20.20.1, not the 172.16.10.11. Okay, so the outside world would see it as that. What is destination? Now, a good example of this. This is done very. This is very common in businesses at home. You're at home right now watching this on YouTube. You probably got some kind of internet provider, maybe on your cell phone. Anyways, doesn't really matter. But let's say you're at home. You got your internet provider. They give you a router. You got a public IP facing the internet. Then you got all your devices inside your house, right? Your computers, your TVs, your phones, whatever, right? And everybody surfing the net, right? Well, your router is doing source NATing. Before this was even possible, everybody would have to have a public IP on the internet, which there's not enough going around. So source NATing here takes your internal addresses and translates it. So right now, my internal addresses in here is a 192.168.70 network. It doesn't really matter. But anyways, but on the outside, when it gets translated outside on my Ubiquiti router, it gets translated to whatever my public IP address is. So very common practice in business and at home, okay? Destination NATing, oops, come on, is the opposite. Destination network address translation, excuse me, is we got traffic coming in, okay? So traffic's coming in. Now, again, I'm going to be doing this on my Tier 1 gateway. So traffic coming in, let's say the traffic's going to 20.20.20.1, whatever the address is, okay? What destination NATing is going to do, it's going to look at that layer 3 packet. It's going to look at the destination address. Oh, where's it going? Oh, I need to take that address out and replace it with something you told me to replace it with. And that's what we're doing in this case. So it's going to come in as 20.20.20.1. On my Tier 1 gateway, that SR component that lives on the edge will say, oh, I'm taking a 20.20.20.1. I'm going to change it with this destination. So now it knows it's got to go down to this VM. A good example, a couple examples on this one is like a load balancer. This is not, I'm not showing you load balancer, but a load balancer does destination NATing. It will take an address that's coming in, and it's going to say, oh, I need to change that address to some other address down here, my web servers, and I'll base it on maybe some kind of load or whatever, round robin or whatever. So that's what the load balancer would do. Take the destination address, manipulate it and change it and send it down to another machine. So this way down here, in my case, I'm going to do a 172.16.10.11 again. So in this case, the outside world thinks it's talking to this, but technically this is the actual IP address, okay? Again, it's the SR component that does this. Now, one thing I want to mention here, notice I said there's an SR component on my Tier 1 gateway. As soon as I have stateful services on a Tier 1 gateway, and even, well, I then need an edge node or edge cluster at that point, okay? So you'll see that when I'm doing my demo, I have to set up my Tier 1 to start using an edge cluster. Anyways, enough of that. Why don't we jump right into the demo? And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button or even the like button or both. All right? See you in a bit. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Let's go into networking. I've got a Tier 0 gateway and a Tier 1 gateway. And I've got a segment connected to that Tier 1. I called it my web. Okay, notice it's going to my Tier 1 gateway, okay? I don't got much of an imagination. You'll see the subnet's the 172.16.10 network, okay? Let's go right into services, okay? Let's go into NAT. Let's click on Add NAT rule. Actually, before I do that, notice under Gateway here, you got to select your gateway, okay? So that's a common mistake. So I'm going to select my Tier 1 gateway, all right? Now, over here under View, you see NAT. That's what I'm looking at. Or I can look NAT 64. I will do a NAT 64 video. I don't have what this is. NAT 64 is if you've got an IP4 network and you got an IP6 network in your environment, and you want to be able to route from an IP4 to an IP6 environment. That's what the NATing in the middle does. Okay, I'm not using IP6 or anything like that. Anyways, so I'm going to leave it on NAT here. I'm going to click on Add NAT rule. And then I'll type in a name. I'll say whatever, source NAT rule, whatever. Call it something that makes sense. You know, I'm going to call it something, you know, my source NAT. Now, what what is this? It can be a source NAT or a destination NAT. I'll mention reflexive NAT, and I'll talk about these two in a minute. Okay, let's just do a source NATing here, which I just talked about. Now it's saying what source IP do you want? It says IP address or CIDR or IP address list. So I could do a one-to-one translation. I can say this IP gets translated to that. I could do something like that. Or I can say this group of IPs gets translated to that, right? Or I can say this group gets translated to that group, that type of thing. Okay, so you get a lot of flexibility here. I'm going to put in the CIDR here, okay? So I can say this whole network gets translated. So I'll go 172.16.10.0/24. And over here I put the translated. What do I want it to translate to? I can put in multiple addresses here. Notice it says IP address or CIDR or IP list. So I could give a list of translated addresses. So as the first machine takes one, then the second machine would take another, and so on. I could say, no, I'm going to translate them all to this one address, 20.20.20.1, okay? Again, I can pick services and all that stuff. I'm just going to keep it like that. This is nice and simple. I'm going to not worry about logging. I'll touch on firewall, okay? Actually, match internal address, match external address, or bypass. Bypass means bypass the firewall rules completely. Internal and external addresses can be confusing, okay? So basically what the internal address is, since I'm doing source NATing, means match on the original address before the NATing. External means, oh, you're doing source NATing, match on the translated address, if that kind of makes sense, okay? So I'm going to leave this alone. I don't really care for my demo, okay? I'm just going to save it. Oh, notice that I got an error. It says there's no local service created for my router tier 1 gateway. It's telling me I don't have a gateway. I don't have an edge node or a cluster associated with that. So obviously I can't continue. So let's go in and fix that. Let's go to my tier 1 gateway. I'm going to go to edit. Right now it's distributed only. I'm going to say it's going to be active standby. It's linked to that one. And I'm going to pick my edge cluster. Now over here I can do failover, auto allocate edges. I can pick and choose which one I want, or I can say auto allocate. I don't care. Preemptive means whatever edge is my primary. Let's say edge 1 is my primary, edge 2 is my secondary. If edge 1 dies, edge 2 comes up as the primary. If edge 1 comes back, preempt means fail back. That's all. I wish it just said fail back or not fail back. So non-preempt means don't fail back. I don't care. I'm just going to leave this. I'll say save. So I've now given my tier 1 an edge cluster, so it can actually now have SRs. So let's go back to that NAT. Let's create that rule again. Oops, almost messed up. You got to make sure you pick the right router here. So I'm doing this on my tier 1. I'll call it my source NAT. I'm doing the source NAT, and then we'll go to 172.16.10.0/24. The translated will be 20.20.20.1. Okay, and I'm going to save that, and then away we go. Great. So how am I going to test this out? Well, there's a couple ways for me to do this. So let me go into my vSphere environment. Let me go to my vSphere Advanced, and here we go. I'm going to log into my client. Let me just log in real quick. Okay, so we're in. Now let's go to, let's look at, I've got a couple machines here. Here's Web 1. You can see that it's hooked up to this, my web segment, which is NSX, and there's Web 2, same segment. If I actually look at their IPs, let's look at Web 1's IP. If I go to summary, over here in the middle panel, you'll see 172.16.10.11. Web 2, 172.16.10.12. Okay, let's log in at Web 1. I've actually got another machine here, database. It's on a different segment altogether. That's the machine that we're going to connect to that's outside of the environment, okay? And its address is 172.16.30.11, so it's a different subnet. So it's outside my environment. Let me go to Web 1. Let's launch the console, and I'm just going to log in on web, and I'm just going to ping database, ping 172.16. 172.16.30.11, and it's working. Now, what address is that machine seeing? Let's do something else. Let's SSH into it. 172.16.30.11, and I'm going to log in. So I just opened up an SSH session to database. Okay, you see that right there. I'm logged in as database. Let's go back into here. Let's go into database. Go into console. Let's log in. And I'm gonna type in NET stat. I'm gonna pipe it with more. At the very top, I can't highlight this. At the very top, I'll highlight it at the very top, you can actually see the foreign address 2020.1. So it's saying, oh, okay, I've got an SSH connection there, and you'll notice the service is SSH. Okay, great. I'm just going to leave that alone. Notice again the foreign address and port. Now let's go into database. No, let's go into Web 2 now. Console. Let's do the same thing. I'm in Web 2. I'm going to SSH into the database 172.16.30.11. 11. It's going to ask me the password. There we go. I'm in database now, SSH. Let's go back to database. Let's kill that. Let's run this NET stat command again. Now you see two connections at the top there for SSH with the same foreign address with a different port. Okay? It's not port. Anyways. So you actually, or is that a socket or port? I forget, to be honest with you. Anyhow, so you see the two different sessions or connections. Sorry. So you actually see that we're doing source snatting. So the outside world sees these two webs as 2020.20.1. Okay. Let's change things up a bit. Let me kill this. Let's go into Web 2. Let's kill the connection. Let's go into Web 1. Oh, where's Web 1? Over here. Let's kill the connection. Okay, we're now disconnected completely. Let's do something else. How about this? Why don't we do this instead? Let's go in and edit this rule. And I just said, the source IP, anything on this network gets translated to that address, right? How about we do the same thing, but I'm going to add a second address here. Let's see what happens, okay? I'm going to kill this. And I'm going to type in 20.20.20.1, comma, 20.20.20.2. Okay? Enter a single cider or a single IP address range or comma separated list, which I've got comma separated. So notice it's got two addresses now. Interesting. I'm going to save this. Let's see what happens now. Okay? Let's try this again. I'm just going to do a ping from, let's actually just hell with it. We'll just do a SSH. Oops. Okay, so I'm back in. This is Web 1. Let's go back to database. Let's do that NET stat command. We see notice it came in at 2020.2 now. Interesting. Okay, let's kill that. Let's go back into Web 2 now and try it again. I hope it's going to pick the other address. Let's go into here and see what happens. Let's. It picked the 20.2. But anyways, it probably should have picked the other one. Let's try something different. It's probably just a luck here, right? A random draw here. Let's try this out. Let's try doing something like this then. Let's go into NSX. Let's edit this. And let's kill this here. Let's put the source address 172.16.10.11, comma 172.16.10.12. So instead of doing the whole address, let's see how that works out. Okay, so it did accept it. Let's save it. And I probably should have exited this. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's see what happens. Maybe I should probably try rebooting or whatever the case may be, or stop the service and start it. But anyways, let's try it again. Let's go into Web 1. Let's SSH into database. Oops. I got a band-aid on my finger, so I'm actually fat fingering my keyboard. So that's Web 1. Notice it's 2020.1. Let's go to Web 2 now. And let's try this now. And there we go. Let's go back to database. Okay, went to 1. Okay. Honestly, if I wanted to translate them exactly, I would create one rule for .1, .11, another rule for that one. Actually, why don't we do that? I'm just kind of working with the luck of the draw here, to be honest with you. Let's edit this. Let's say, nope, I don't want that one. And so 11 will get translated to 1. Let's save it. Let's add another rule. SNAT-2. Let's say 172.16.10.12. And it's going to get translated to 20.20.20.2. Okay. Let's save it. Oh, it's a DNAT. Sorry. Let's pick source NAT, and then let's save it. There we go. Now let's try this again. Let's go to Web 1, exit. Let's reconnect back to database. There we go. There's database. Let's go back in there. Let's kill this. So we see, oh, sorry, still got that connection on Web 2. Let's get that. Exit. Okay, now let's try this out. Should only have the one connection. Web 1 is 2020.1. Let's go back to Web 2. This better work. That should be 2020.2 now. Let's go back in. Kill that. Boom, you actually see it now. Okay? So you see you got a lot of flexibility here. How about DNATing? Let's take a look at DNATing. And by the way, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's create a DNAT rule, okay? So again, I'm on my tier 1 gateway. I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a rule here. It'll be a destination natting. So I'm just going to call this DNAT-1. Again, the action is going to be destination natting. The source IP, it's destination, so I'm going to enter the destination IP. So I'm going to say anybody that wants to go to 20.20.20.1, anybody that wants to go to that address, please send it to my first web server, 172.16.10. Man, I can't type. 16.10.11. Okay. Again, I could have done a range. I could say just send it to any one of these if I could have, done something like that. Let's save this. Now I'm going to go back to my database. Now, how am I going to check that? Let's do curl 20. I don't have a browser hooked up on the database. 20.20.20.1. So this is like a command line browser if you folks aren't familiar with this. Quick way of looking at it. So I'll hit enter there. And you actually see it came back. And that web server there, you can see it says web. I'll highlight this. It says web server 1, 172.16.10.11. So that's actually the that web server actually has a page running, and it says, "Oh, it's not. It's it's me. This is who I am," type of thing. So anybody going to that address is going to that web server. I could create another one. Let's add. How about this? If I go curl 20.20.2, that should nothing. It should not work, right? It doesn't. Of course, somebody's phoning me. No, so that was the end of the phone call. So you can see here, it says it couldn't connect to that host. That was 20.20.20.2. Let's create another rule just to be, just to show you folks, right? Let's go into here. Let's go add NAT rule. I'll do a DNAT-2. The source, the destination will be 20.20.20.2. The translated will be 172.16.10.12, my second web server. I'm going to save that. That looks good. Let's go back to database. Let's try that again. Boom. You now see it says 172.16.20.10.12. So database server is going to 20.20.20.2, and it's getting redirected to Web 2. So that's destination natting. Okay. I actually used to do some of that stuff when I traveled a lot. I had a public IP at my house, and if I was at a hotel and I wanted to access my servers internally, I would basically RDP or whatever connect to my public address. It would then redirect me, do a DNAT to a workstation that I actually had set up. And from that station, I could basically power on my servers and do all kinds of stuff remotely. So on the road, I was able to access my servers for my classrooms and stuff. That's basically it. Now, just a couple of things I want to point out here. If I go back into here, back into here is where I want to go. If I go back to add NAT rule, so you'll see you've got no source NAT and no DNAT. So source NAT, DNAT I just talked about. No source NATing, no DNATing. Let's say I was doing a range. I want this range. Remember I said, okay, 172.16.10 network gets translated to this address. I could go in there and say all of those, but this machine. Don't source NAT this machine. Let it go out original. That's what no source NAT and no DNAT. Please exclude these ones. Reflexive NAT, I'm actually surprised it's an option on tier 1. It's actually more of a tier 0. Reflexive NAT means it's stateless NAT. Okay, and that's really just supported on tier 0 gateways, not tier 1. I don't even know why it's an option here, to be honest with you. So that's reflexive NAT, is more of a stateless source NATing type of thing. But that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed this. This should have been short and sweet. And leave your comments and questions down below. Please, if you found this entertaining or just a bit helpful, hit that thumbs up. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Also, if you've got any anything that you want to see me cover, please leave a comment down below. I'll see what I can do. I am restricted on how much software I have and stuff like that. But anyhow, thanks again. See you in the next one. Bye for now.